Welcome to the webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all, depending on where you are joining from today. Thank you for joining. I am Angira Day, the Client Relationship Director at Netwoven, and your moderator for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, The Roadmap to Security Modernization. In this webinar today, we'll discuss how to secure your business and mitigate cybersecurity risks by deriving maximum value from your Microsoft security products to fortify foundations, shield and protect, and safeguard as well. And I would like to introduce today's speakers. Matt Marr is an early member of the Netwoven team and has helped Fortune 500 companies implement large-scale enterprise systems for the last 15 years. As a technical director, he is passionate about blending productivity and securing to enable modern workplaces. And I also have Travis Gwen, who is from Microsoft. He has been with Microsoft for 17 years. He's the principal partner solution architect. He is responsible for supporting partners with building security solutions in Microsoft 365. Talking about Netwoven. So Netwoven is a managed Microsoft solution partner, have all the credentials. We are a fast track ready partner. We are a member of the prestigious Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, MISA. And we also have all the advanced specialization on security. We are a content service preferred partner, and we also have been marked by Gartner as one of the recognized as one of the best migration service provider. Next slide, Matt. So we have 6 consulting practices, and they are, as you can see from this slide, there's content and collaboration covering SharePoint, Teams, Viva, employee experience, intranet modernization, all of that. And then we have security, for which today we meet. We have cloud infrastructure practice. We also have modern application, data and analytics, AI and machine learning. So these are the 6 practice areas where we are well known from Microsoft as well as other partners as well. Next slide, Matt. Today's objectives is just a sec. Yep. So today, we'll discuss how to secure our business and mitigate cybersecurity risks by deriving maximum value from your Microsoft security products to fortify foundations, shield and protect, and safeguard. And with that, I will hand over the presentation to Matt. And just before doing that, I would like to let you know that there is a Q&A section where you could ask any questions, and we will be answering all questions at the end of the presentation today. Thank you.
Great,
Matt,
thanks.
take it
Thanks,
over.
Angira.
You're
Hey,
welcome.
everybody. Thank you for your time today. I know we're all busy schedule, but I appreciate you taking the time and allowing me to talk about Microsoft's security stack and Netwoven's proven methodology in implementation. I thought we'd start first by talking about trends and the current landscape. One of these I pulled from Wall Street Journal just the other day, we're starting to see this trend where CEOs and C-levels are having their compensation tied to the number of security events of that company. You can imagine if your company has a $50 million ransomware attack or something like that, that's affecting the bottom line, and those C-suites should be, not compensated that highly that year. We're also seeing in that same article, it mentions, that we're seeing a lot of layoffs in the cybersecurity space as companies start looking for tools that can do more with less. And so, we're not seeing this trend of throw more people at the problem. We're seeing the trend of, improve the tooling and get a technology stack, a security suite that covers a broader range rather than each individual application having their own security stack. Some more trends that I wanted to just share with everybody. And again, this is ammo for you all to go to your C-suite and explain why security is a big problem and needs to be addressed now if you haven't already done so. But Microsoft had pulled together these kind of stats. The one in the bottom right scares me the most. These are over 900 password attacks every second. 50% of individuals are starting to use their personal device for work. These are BYOD and unmanaged. And so if we don't have the right security posture, there's a whole load of things we're concerned about with data exfiltration, ransomware. We've seen where one personal device connects in and then locks all of the files on a shared SharePoint site, similar to their OneDrive. So these are concerning trends that we see, and just further amplifies the need for security to be top of mind. The other part to all of this is that we have more and more devices coming online, more and more scenarios. We have bring your own identities. We have secure collaboration, B2B, B2C. Our business is throwing more and more at us to go secure. Luckily, Microsoft is not a small shop, and they have solutions for a lot of these. It just becomes a bit overwhelming if you need to secure everything under the sun that your company has. So with that, we kind of put together what we call a security journey. And our security journey leverages the 6 main products Microsoft offers for securing. So these 6 products cover over 50 categories, and you can start to see Microsoft's approach to security, which is do more with less, right? Rather than have 20 product suites, they've narrowed down to 6, and they cover a lot of things. We have Entra, which is the new name for Azure AD, covering a lot of that identity access management, identity lifecycle governance. So we build on top of these 6 product groups to bring a more secure future. Why do we have this methodology? Well, the previous slide says it all. There's 50 plus categories that the industry kind of identifies as areas to secure, whether it's endpoint, identity, data loss, data protection, encryption, cloud, Azure Sentinel, all of these. And a lot of customers come to us and say, hey, we're overwhelmed. Help us become more secure. And they already own a lot of the Microsoft licensing. So it's just natural that we come up with a methodology that can be rinsed and repeated across multiple organizations. That way, we've already identified all of the risks because we've done this many of times. We have an iterative approach so that you don't feel overwhelmed by implementing, tool after tool after tool. We've split it into 3 phases, and we'll talk about those 3 phases next. And then the last one, just make sure that there are no surprises when it comes to budget. A lot of times with licensing, it sounds great. You say, yeah, let's go adopt Sentinel, for example. And then you realize, wait, if I ingest all of my on-prem, router logs, if I ingest all of my LOB systems into Sentinel, my costs balloon up exponentially. With our methodology, we do workshops and questionnaires up front to make sure that we stay within the budget that's defined, or if there are features that are needed, we call those out up front, whether it's licensing, Azure consumption costs, consultants, and internal stakeholder time. So with that, I'd like to talk through this methodology. And this is what we're going to spend the rest of the webinar on. Like I mentioned, we split it up into 3 phases. Our first phase is really fortifying the foundation. If you think about these are the quick wins. These are applications that you already have in-house, you already have purchased and licensed. You just need tweaking to harden them. A good example would be Entra, right? A lot of people have Azure AD Connect syncing up to the cloud, and that's fine and good. With a few clicks, we can make it great. Things such as, not allowing guests to see your directory. Things like these are just one click, but a lot of companies don't know that they're there, and so they don't do them. The next phase after we fortify that base is protecting users. So we talk about threat intelligence here, device provisioning to ensure a secure lifecycle of your endpoints, information protection, compliance, all of these kind of protect the data, the devices, the identities, and allow us to build on top of what we had put in place with our fortification. So things like Entra, Intune, Purview. We're iteratively building a more secure company for you. And then the pinnacle of our methodology is safeguarding. This is where, all of those quick hits are out of the way. And now we get to dig in and really secure the environment. Things like data loss prevention, retention, SIEM and SOAR integration with Sentinel. These are projects that take a little bit longer, but give the company great value. You can kind of think of it as an 80-20, where that last pinnacle of the pyramid is going to take the most, but give you a lot of value. So let's jump in, and I'll talk through some of the tasks that we do as Netwoven inside of the Microsoft Security Suite when we talk about fortifying foundations. So we split all of our phases into these 4 categories. And if you're a security focused person, these kind of make sense. We talk about identity access management, endpoint, threat protection, and data. We find that, talking these 4 tracks makes sense. And you'll see in each phase, we're tackling projects, like mini projects in each 4 of these categories. So starting with our identity and access, one that we're really big on for beginners is the secure score. So we'll dig in and we'll look at secure score. We'll also do those quick hits for MFA, customer key, so that we have a BYOK lockbox to make sure that only your company has access to your data, and that when you ever get those data security questionnaires from partners or vendors, you can answer wholeheartedly, yes, we are the only ones that own our data. Jumping into kind of the endpoint stuff, we do basic uplift here with device enrollment. So we'll take your devices, make sure they're hybrid Azure AD join, or if you have no on-prem, we'll ensure that these are all Azure AD joined. We'll also do quick hits with MDM and MAM. This is a great one to cost save. There are a lot of vendors in the space and they charge per device. With your M365 licenses, most of them will come with an Intune license. So M365 E3 and above, F3s, they contain those Intune licenses. And it's a very quick shift to go from AirWatch or Mobile Iron over to Intune. You already have it, and it's already integrated with your productivity suite if you're using Microsoft 365 for email and collaboration. And then we'll also tackle some of the basics of lifecycle management. This one is key to security because every person that touches a endpoint in the early lifecycle is usually an administrator. So think about your PC car wash where a technician gets the device, they log in, they're setting things up, they're running through MECM packages, that stuff. They're admins, and that's additional exposure that you don't need if you plan out your lifecycle properly. The next category would be threat protection. So we'll hit those quick wins with Defender for Office, Defender for Endpoint, and Defender for Cloud App. A lot of these are pretty quick to get going. Most likely you have policies that already talk about antivirus and day one vulnerability. We're just configuring Defender for Endpoint to adhere to those policies. And then lastly, we talked about data protection. A lot of our data protection advances happen in the pinnacle of our pyramid. So at the very last, after we set up all of these, we would tackle data protection. Part of that is because data protection takes a lot of change management, adoption, and a lot of other foundational pieces such as Defender for Endpoint to be set up properly to protect DLP, CASB to be set up so that you don't have data exfiltration through your web browser. So you can see that a lot of things in the data world can't happen until we get these foundational pieces done. So we talked at the beginning of this foundation for Secure Score, and I thought it makes sense to dive in and kind of look at what Secure Score is. A lot of you may be familiar with it, but for those that are not, Secure Score is Microsoft's way to kind of gamify your security and allow you to see progress as you start securing your environment. So I have a quick little demo set up. Let me just pull up my demo tenant right here. Boom. Great. And so if you go into security.microsoft.com, you can go under your secure score and see a lot of actions that Microsoft recommends you take to become compliant or to become more secure. So this is a great start for internal teams. The internal team, oh, sorry, clicked on that. There we go. The internal team is probably capable of doing a lot of the quick hits. Now, not all of these quick hits should be done. You might already have an investment in another product that takes care of antivirus. So when you see the top recommendation to enforce Defender for Endpoint antivirus, you would want not to do that because the two antivirus will fight each other. One of the things that I like is that this secure score compares me to other organizations. So I get a benchmark of where I am in terms of other organizations of my size. I also have the ability to just see achievable scores and current licenses. So if I don't own any E5 licenses, which is the top of the line license in the Microsoft 365 suite, if I don't own any of those, my secure score is not going to tell me to get better at managing, like trainable classifiers and those types of things that are only in the E5 license SKU. So when I jump in to Secure Score, they break it down into those very similar categories, right? Identity, data, apps, and endpoint. When I go into my recommendations, it tells me, if my internet speeds up, it tells me, what are the score impacts? If I tackle impersonated domain protection, I could improve my score by 2.87%. Now, I'm going to warn you, it gets a bit addictive as a solution technologist. When I keep seeing the score increase and increase, I strive to get it higher and higher. And so it's a time sink that I find when I'm constantly trying to eke out each point so that my secure score goes higher. I've never actually gotten to 100%. Truth or dare, I've never been to 100%. I've gotten close into the 90s, but it's. I would say to get to 100%, you probably don't have any internet connections at all. So let's look at one of these. For example, the enable impersonated domain protection. We can see that it will increase by 2.87%. But how do I get there? Microsoft gives us this great implementation guide that talks about, to ensure everybody has an anti-phishing policy with enabled domains, include domains, and include custom domains enabled. That's great. They also give me the easy button, right? I can go right in, click on that manage, and get right to those anti-phishing policies to make that update. Now, most organizations and enterprises probably have a few more steps to do. For example, you might have change management. You have to make sure that you put in a CR, make sure that you run this by your ARB and the rest of your architects. But in general, Microsoft will give you those easy buttons to jump in and tell you exactly what you need to change. So this is a great first step when fortifying. So the ability to get these quick hits builds momentum and gets people excited about tackling some of the bigger problems that might seem more mountainous in nature as the project goes along. So that's why we always start down at the secure score. So I think Ingira has a quick survey just to gauge everybody's knowledge with Secure Score. If she
Yes,
wants to
I
post
do.
that poll. Thanks, Ingira.
Okay, let me post this. It will take just a few seconds to answer, I suppose.
Great. And I think as you're doing that, Ingira, in the interest of time, maybe I'll keep going along.
Okay.
Great. So once we get done with our fortification project, in the next methodology, the next phase of our methodology is called shield and protect. This is where we're diving into threat protection, threat intelligence, and threat analysis. We're looking at securing device provisioning, getting into some of that compliance and governance space. In order to do those, we had to have built our foundation. And so that's why we kind of have to save some of these for phase 2. And let me show you what we have in phase 2. As you can see, it's still the same 4 categories where we're talking about securing identity, endpoints, threat threats, and then data protection. The common theme, though, is protect, shield, and protect. So let's start with our identity. Here we would look at securing privileged identities, external use cases such as B2B collaboration, tenant restrictions. For those that don't have tenant restrictions already enabled, this is a great way to protect your users from depositing your company documents into other M365 repositories. So let's say a big company wants to share documents with me at Netwoven. They invite me to their M365 SharePoint to collaborate with. And if I sign in, I could accidentally exfiltrate data, confidential data to their M365 tenant. We close the door on all of this and we put in tenant restrictions to only those partners that we do close business with, or individuals that are in organizations that have taken training. Next, with the endpoints, we're kind of building on top of those basic Intune features and broadening, right? We're talking about Jamf integration for Mac management, autopilot to do that no-touch deployment. We're looking at BYOD strategies. So phase one, we've created all of these MAM and MDM policies. Phase two is that we start rolling out those MAM policies and making sure that any tweaks are occurring to our policy. The threat protection gets a lot of love in phase two. We're looking at the Defender for Identity. We do a shadow IT analysis with our CASB solution, Microsoft's cloud Defender for Cloud App is what we call it, not CASB. And we're looking for what other IT, embedded IT organizations are using. We're also building on top of all of the setup of logs. So Sentinel now has a lot of logs that we get to sort through. Sentinel, for those that don't know, is a Microsoft's SIEM and SOAR solution. So beyond just your traditional SIEM, Sentinel can actually automate and do that automated response. We also tighten the screws on a lot of the outside world sending data in. So safe attachment and safe links are applied not only to email, but also IM. With teams blowing up across the world, there's a lot of exposure to our users using Teams messaging. So Microsoft just released a couple months ago, anytime an external person IMs you on Teams, it gives you a warning that these are external people. That's great. That's to fight this kind of imposter impersonation attack, but it doesn't protect against malicious links or any type of attachments through Teams. So we turn safe links on for both email and Teams. And then we'll dig into things like Application Guard and Endpoint DLP. For those that don't know, Application Guard, really cool feature. It's basically a sandboxed browser that is not allowed to talk to the rest of your device. And so if you even have a home device, you could look at Application Guard to use Edge for like safe browsing, so that you can open up this kind of instance of Edge and not be worried that it might be malicious. Anything that you're browsing to is malicious. At this point in phase two, we also start tackling some of the data protection items. We'll be creating some light policies with labels, unified labels. Those cover our retention, talk about governance. What is your policy around creating teams? What is your policy around disposing and disposition of guest accounts? All of that stuff. We also sell a product called Govern 365, which is great for secure external collaboration, as well as governance around the Microsoft 365 collaboration suite. We'll jump in and do some of the trainable classifiers if your licensing allows, and kind of allow Microsoft information protection to start identifying some of your documents based on a set of documents that you provide. One of the topics in our phase 2 was about the threat protection. Microsoft has a few solutions in this space. There are a few products: threat analysis and threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is an acquisition made, I think, 2 years ago now, from a company called Risk IQ. For those that knew Risk IQ, a lot of that goody stuff is coming into threat intelligence, and you can sort through all of the open, security issues across the world, specific to your region, specific to your technology, all in one place. So that's a really cool acquisition, and they're starting to incorporate that in so that we have this dynamic threat intelligence. So I have a quick little demo of both threat analysis and threat intelligence. So let me bring up my demo again. The first one we're going to tackle is the threat analytics. So threat analytics is within the security.microsoft.com. And what it does is kind of highlight some of the recent attacks that have been found in the world, and then also how many have been found inside of your tenant. So Microsoft is already using the signals that are found across the hundreds of thousands of tenants in the world, and then narrowing it down to which ones have affected you. Do we see similar signatures within your tenant? So let's take the one, a more recent one that has been hitting people this week. If you're in the security industry, you've heard of this one. Emerald Sleep is a great hacking group, and they have been doing this phishing attack in the past week based on Google Docs. So threat analytics tells us basically a summary about the targeted phishing attack, gives you an analysis so that we can empower our help desk folks with, hey, someone just reported this as phishing. Oh, great. We're up to speed. We know that this is an ongoing attack. What's great about all of this inside of the Microsoft 365 world is that it allows you to then look at any impacted assets in your M365. So once we've rolled out this foundation of M365 Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud, Office 365 Defender, we'll now get to see any device or any user, any mailbox, any application that is being affected or targeted by this attack. Microsoft makes it very easy because we can just go right into our recommended actions and see what the security analysts have said could stop this attack going forward. So obviously it doesn't work for day 1 or day 0 attacks, but for some of these more common ones, you can see, all we would have to do is to set an action to take on our phishing detection. If this looks familiar, that's because this is also the secure score. So it's going to highlight actions from our secure score that could make us more secure and for this one particular attack. So this is great. This is the threat analytics portion of security. And if you go back, you can see things are being updated daily. The one we looked at was a phishing attempt that's been caught in the wild. Luckily, I have 0 devices or 0 assets being targeted right now, so I can sleep a little bit better. The next part of threat intelligence is that risk IQ acquisition and it being rolled into threat intelligence. This is a great place to go browse and understand what is happening in the world of security. Again, it's in one single location. You don't have to subscribe to NIST and CIS and all of the other security blogs. Microsoft analysts compile all of this information and bring it into a single pane. You can see, that there's a current exploit for VMware Horizon, and you can dig in and read up on the attack that is being seen, the attack chain, and then also the recommendations. So how do I resolve it? This is certainly a lot of information to digest. And so, where we see this successful is organizations, enterprises that have dedicated SOC teams and dedicated red and blue teams that are focused on, security, both data and identity security. So it might be a lot for a outsider to see all of the articles, all of the CVEs, but as somebody that's in the industry, this is awesome. This is like my daily news feed. I geek out to, oh, what's the latest attack on iOS devices that are going on. So I always read this through my morning coffee, and then if I have time at lunch. All right, so that's kind of our phase 2, which is our shield and protect. Now we're ready to kind of really tackle the big security issues of an organization with our third phase called safeguard. And safeguard talks about those really hard projects to complete: data loss prevention, retention, SIEM, and SOAR. I mean, these are what companies would usually take months, years to implement. We can now do these projects in a lot shorter time because we've built this foundation. We've built a pyramid where we don't need to go and make sure that every endpoint has an agent on it. We've done that with our foundation. We don't need to go and define a BYOD policy for mobile because we've done that with our shield and protect phase. So now we can tackle projects like data loss, encryption, cloud security. We can attack these in a lot shorter time because we've already made significant progress in the previous 2 phases. So just to give you an idea on some of the ones that we would look at, from an identity space, we'd look at that identity governance. So when your HRIS system hands off to, Azure AD or AD, that's one small piece to, the life cycle of identity. What we would look at is, okay, what else do we need to provision based on this user? And really use Entra ID to be that workflow engine, provision that SAP account. And then when that user changes roles, or if that user retires, we know how to claw back those permission sets. We also look at information barriers at this time, right? We do a lot of global companies where, they say this region can't talk to this region, Or they say this department, marketing, can't talk to engineering. We have a lot of experience with SOC compliance and other regulatory compliance rules that that are in the industry that tell us, you can't let so and so talk to so and so. That's a conflict of interest, and so we would be setting up these information barriers. We also look, dig in a little bit deeper with our endpoint management. At this point, the well is almost dry in terms of what we can achieve in endpoint. We've already secured a lot of stuff in that space. So we'd look at that elevated privilege, remote help, advanced endpoint analytics. These are all great features of Intune, but they're not quick wins. So we kind of wait till the end to tackle those. And once we have that saturation of Defender for Endpoint across our organization. We also look at the threat protection again. We broaden our scope to look at servers. A lot of this stuff has Azure Sentinel, Azure Log Analytics. We also will dig deeper into attack simulations. Whether you want to do a tabletop exercise of red versus blue, if you want to do an attack simulation on your end users to make sure that they've, absorbed the training that we've provided when it comes to phishing or credential harvesting, we would do those in this final phase, as well as set up repeatable processes so that you're not constantly calling Netwoven to, hey, like, how did you do that? On these projects, we're handing off documents that your team can run with and continue in a DOP, an operating procedure. And then finally, we do get to tackle those big issues in data protection. There are so many countless privacy laws in place based on where you do business, whether it's state specific in California, region specific in the EU, country specific in Brazil. Data residency and privacy you need a PhD. Luckily, we have enough engineers that deal with this day in and day out that we stay on top of all of these privacy regulations, data sovereignty regulations, and we're really, with this methodology, able to just take what we've done and apply it to your scenario. If you don't do business in the UK, then we don't need to talk about data sovereignty and making sure that that data stays in the data centers. All right. One of the big ones, like I mentioned, is that data sensitivity or data classification. And we use the Purview product from Microsoft to not only do tagging with email with labels, but we also use Purview to go discover. So those that are not familiar with data classification, Microsoft has built this into, it's a unified labeling agent. It's built into all of your Office products, also built into, like, for example, the web interface. So like if I were to go to my email, and I spin up a new email, my labeling is right here. I can mark it confidential, highly confidential, and these labels come from Purview. So I think my next slide was, the Purview, the data classification demo. So Ngira has a poll about data classification. If you want to launch it in Ngira, I will set
I'm
up.
doing that.
I will set up the demo on data classification. Right.
Did I
All
put
right.
the wrong one?
It's okay. I have the demo ready, so we can jump right in. All right. So inside of Purview, which is compliance.microsoft.com, we have a section called data classification. In here, you get to see things, a snapshot, an overview of your sensitive information types, your SITs. We love acronyms. SIT is what we call sensitive information types. And these are both Microsoft generated sensitivity types as well as your organization's sensitive labels. So Microsoft might not know what Project Kangaroo is, but inside of your organization, you know that that's the acquisition of one of your big competition, your big competitors. So we get to marry both this industry, or public labels such as security, social security numbers, driver licenses, all of that with company specific labels, Project Kangaroo, M&A activity, that stuff. So this gives you a nice little overview of it. You can then dive in and see all of those classifiers and sensitive information types. The trainable classifiers are great because sometimes us technologists, we don't know what the signature of a Project Kangaroo document looks like. So instead, Microsoft gives us the ability to train a classifier by giving it 50 to 200 documents, sift through that, use machine learning to extract patterns, and then come up with a label for that. The sensitive information types, again, allow us to do pattern matching. Microsoft gives us a ton of them, and we can provide our own things like, Project, Project Obsidian. If I go into that one, I get to see, okay, for this M&A activity, I have 0 matches, 0 feedback. The next area that this data classification allows us to go to is our Content Explorer. So we've defined all of our labels. We've taught our end users how to apply them. We now get to go in and see where our data is. I was in a call the other day and the CISO said, my toughest, what keeps me up at night is when I get that security questionnaire and a company asks me, do you know where all of my data is? And they can't answer it with a straight face because they don't know where all that data lives. You don't know your risk exposure. So data classification allows us to now see within the Microsoft ecosystem where all of that data resides. So let's take an example. I think that Project Obsidian was a good one. Once I go into that SIT, I can see all of those Microsoft locations that the data resides in. So I can say, okay, drill into SharePoint. I want to see Project Obsidian documents that are stored inside of SharePoint. And it does a real-time query into SharePoint. I can see that it's stored in this Mark 8 project team. That's not, Mark 8 was not Obsidian, that was another acquisition. So I can come in and I can say, oh yeah, look at this. This was tagged Project Obsidian. If I click on the SIT, it's going to tell me that it has a low confidence that this document is Project Obsidian. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll deal with low, but let me do my due diligence and look at it real quick. So I can click on it and see, let me just make that a little bigger. I can see a preview of that document. And this one clearly, it just was flagged because it had the words Project Obsidian. It's not actually a document. I can look at the summary of this document. If there is more than one match, because I could have a document with social security numbers, phone numbers, full names, all of that, you can see the summary of each match in this contextual summary tab. And then I can see, okay, the metadata to this document last modified in 2020. I'm going to guess somebody just copied, created a lot of documents with the words Project Obsidian. When I created my tag Project Obsidian, the trainable classifier is incorrectly tagging this. So I can go give feedback to the trainable classifier and say, not a match, right? This document, that's not really what I was hoping for to catch Project Obsidian documents. So hopefully you can see the power that I get to look across all of my locations in M365, all of the sensitive information types, the sensitive labels, the trainable classifiers. If I had any retention labels, those would be listed here as well. And I could get a really good view of where all that data resides. The last part of trainable of the data classification is the activity explorer. So inside of here, it really gauges how well users are using our labels. If you have a lot of, relabeling or changing of labels, you might want to look at better defining your labels in your user training. If you have a lot of label removed, you need to reinforce the benefit of labels. We can't, it costs money to protect documents and stuff, so we don't expect everything under the sun to be labeled. But if you've gone through these exercises and rolled out data classification and they're expecting your users to use them and they start removing them, then this sounds like that we need to work on that change management and teach the users the benefits. All right, and those are the main parts of data classification. There's a ton more to get into with these, but that kind of caps off the our pinnacle of the methodology. And so just to recap, some of the benefits of following this methodology and using the Microsoft security stack, we're building on the strong foundations. We're integrating systems so that they talk to each other. Um, Building on new features without re-engineering or buying new products, reducing that management overhead because again we're rinsing and repeating. We've come up with this framework, delivered it to many customers. Your business use cases, while they might be unique, have repeatable assets from one to another. And then bringing you all the way to the end. If you love it, then we have managed services to keep it going. All right, so our call to action for you, well, first off, thank you for attending the webinar. Call to action, if you would like, we have a complimentary workshop that goes through this methodology specific to your company needs. This is offered free of charge. All you have to do is email my colleague Angira, and she will work with you to schedule that workshop. This is, a 2-hour workshop talking through your needs and what you have in place today, what you see the vision of future is. If you need help defining that vision, that's what these sessions are about. All right, Angira, I think that wraps everything up. I don't know how much I don't know how much time we have for Q&A.
We really don't have too much time, but I'll just take few, if that's okay with you, Matt.
Yeah, and everybody else that asks questions, I'm sure Angira will be able to reach back out to them.
Yes, if we cannot answer today, we will definitely send you a response to your emails. So there is this question from Graham Plonsky. Does Fortify Foundations phase assist organization with managing unauthorized software installation?
Yeah, so it does. Short answer is it does. We would be in putting the Defender for Endpoint on devices during Fortify. And Defender for Endpoint has the capabilities of blocking unauthorized applications. Um, and so, yes, that part would probably be part of that foundation. There are more longer answers, such as, well, what do we do when someone needs to install it? That's when the privileged management comes into place. That would be more at the pinnacle level in our third pyramid.
Thank you, Matt. And then there is another question. If I use Secure Score, will I be penalized for not using a Microsoft product like Proofpoint?
Great question. So I might have glossed over this, but Secure Score allows you to indicate that a third party is satisfying that control. So if you're mitigating email phishing with Proofpoint, you can indicate that in Secure Score and gain the points by just saying a third party manages that for me. So not at all, you're not dinged for not using Defender for Office 365. You can continue using Proofpoint. Just tell Secure Score that something else maintains it.
We just have a minute here. So what I would say is we'll follow up with an email for the questions I have from the attendees so that all are answered. Thanks everyone for attending our webinar. Have a great day. Thank you, Matt, for your presentation.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you learned something today.
And if you have any questions, please do reach out to me. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.